Welcome to the 27th chapter of the book of Isaiah. This chapter is interesting in that it seems like it jumps around as far as the time. Some of it sounds like a time that's going to be close to a hand for Isaiah, another time in the future, and Israel. When these times are going to be, it's sometimes difficult to figure out, but we'll try. And it begins in that day. God will bring on the holy and the great and the strong sword against the dragon, the fleeing serpent. Well, that's a lot right there. The sword, the great. And so it's a sword of God. It's not a sword, I don't think, of man. The only place I could find a great sword mentioned was in Revelation 6:4, and it says, "And went forth another horse, fiery, and to the one sitting upon it was given to him to take peace from out of the earth. And they shall slay one another, and was given to him a great sword." Same as right here, mega, a great sword. And then, it's to take peace from the earth, and God will bring on this strong sword against the dragon. So already the dragon is on the earth, so I think that the part that he's talking about in Revelation 6:4 has already taken place, and now God is going to use this sword, apparently against the dragon. There's a lot on the dragon in our Entities of the Book of Revelation book. Here it can be found in our bookstore. We've went through a lot of that on the dragon in the book of went through the book of Revelation, the video seminars. But this dragon appears, it calls him the fleeing serpent. We'll see that this is Satan because it talks about him in Revelation. But I'll give you some information on the serpent. The draconta is dragon, and ophis in the nominative is a serpent, the fleeing serpent. And then it goes in against the serpent, the crooked serpent. Well, serpents are crooked, but why he uses that there, I'm not sure. But this dragon we usually think of more like a crocodile or an alligator with the four legs, and or the serpent is something that slithers along. Now, we first see the serpent in Genesis 3:1. It says, "But the serpent was the most skilled of all of the wild beasts upon the earth, whom the Lord God made." Now, of course, the serpent communicates with Adam and Eve, and we know the story of their fall. The next place where it talks about, uses the word draconta, is when Aaron goes in front of the Pharaoh and he throws down the staff, and it becomes a draconta, but it's obviously a serpent because it slithers along, I think. But this is next place, so some type of a reptilian creature. And then in Job 26:13 it says, "And the bolts of heaven are in awe of him, and of his ardor he put to death the dragon defector." So here Job talks about the dragon defector. So it's not an animal in Job, it's some type of a thinking being of a sort. And God puts to death the dragon defector. In Isaiah 51:9, later in this book, it says, "Awaken, awaken, O Jerusalem, and put on the strength of your arm. Awaken as in the beginning of days, as a generation of an eon. Are you not the one being quarried in width, being torn up by the dragon?" So we'll get into that when we get to the 51, but torn up by the dragon. The dragon was also mentioned at places where it almost sounds like it's a reptilian being in Egypt, a crocodile, or I don't think alligators were there. I think they're North American only, so it would have been a crocodile. There is a word for crocodiles, crocodilos, It's a Greek word. Then in Revelation 12:9 it says, "And the great dragon was cast." There it is, the ancient serpent being called devil and Satan. So now we see that the dragon is Satan, the ancient serpent, exactly the same as what Isaiah is seeing or talking about. And then in Revelation 20, verse 2, it says, "And he sees the dragon, the ancient serpent, who is the devil and Satan, the one misleading the entire inhabitable world, and bound him 1,000 years." And that's Revelation 20.2. So exactly what he's talking about here in Isaiah, and he will do away with the dragon, the one in the sea. Now, Revelation 13:1, it says, "And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw from out of the sea a wild beast ascending." Now, I believe that's talking about the beast, the dragon, Satan of some sort, taking a form. "In that day there shall be a good vineyard and a desire to lead a song concerning it." Now, is talking about after the beast is destroyed and Israel will be rebuilt in the 1,000-year reign? That's the only thing I could think of is this was talking about this good. In that day there shall be a good vineyard. I'd like to think it's us, the Christians, but don't know, and a desire to lead a song concerning it. "I am a fortified city, a city being assaulted," which, now what is he talking about? I am a fortified city, a city being assaulted. He's talking about Jerusalem, or a metaphor of a person being as a fortified city, but yet it's assaulted, probably that. "In folly I water her, for she shall be captured by night, and by day her wall shall fall." So this future destruction, if it's talking about Jerusalem, then, which I believe in the future, it will be captured and the wall will fall to a certain extent. I'm not exactly sure, but I don't know what else it could be referring to here, unless it's just referring to the Jerusalem being destroyed by the Romans or by Nebuchadnezzar. A lot of the wall was destroyed. "There is not her who did not take hold of her. Therefore, because of this, the Lord did all as much as he ordered. I am incinerated," the city. The Romans incinerated Rome, incinerated Jerusalem. "All the ones dwelling in her shall yell, saying, 'We should make peace with him, we should make peace.'" And who is the him? God. Once they are being attacked, and then they go to God. "The ones coming, children of Jacob. Israel shall burst forth and shall blossom, and the inhabitable world shall be filled with its fruit." Well, I know today you can read a lot about Israel and the fruit production that it has, world leader in fresh vegetables and fruit, and exporting. 2016, the exported vegetables and fruits valued $740 million, and they're still growing more different fruits that they did last year. So it's too much to go into in this chapter, but if you go and look on Wikipedia and look up Israel and fruit agriculture, you'll see what it's talking about. It's pretty amazing. And now it goes, "Is it not as he struck others, even he himself, so shall be struck?" So see it here, the time sounds like it's gone back to the beast again, because how has that got to do with Israel and the fruit? "And as he was did away with, also he himself thus shall be done away with." And Satan will be done away with, thrown into the lake of fire. "He shall send them out." Now, who is the he here? Is it God here? Because it says, "He shall send them out doing combat and berating. Were you not the one meditating with a harsh spirit to do away with them in a spirit of rage, which God was, or I'm not sure if it would be the dragon here or God. It's to me it's hard to determine. I would think he's talking about God's rage because it mentions that so many places. On account of this, the lawlessness shall be removed from Jacob, because the rage of God does destroy Israel. So the lawlessness will be taken away because there is no more Israel. And this is his blessing whenever I should remove the sin of his. So when is the sin going to be removed? You can see down here in Romans 11:27, it mentions this in that verse. Whenever the sin should be removed, in a time when the Christians, whenever Christ appeared, then sin was removed from the believer. And New Jerusalem, as all the believers will then be in that place, sin will not anymore take place. Whenever they should furnish all the stones of the shrines for being cut in pieces as fine powder. So this is, well, they did break up the shrines after Nebuchadnezzar pretty much was the end of idolatry. And in no way should their trees remain, and their idols shall be in a state of being cut down as a forest far off. And these are the trees, I believe, are the trees that are in the high places that they were worshiping the idols. The flock dwelling there will be spared as a flock being left behind. Now, exactly what it's referring to here, the flock being spared as a flock being left behind, and there will be much time for pasture, and there they shall rest. Where and who these, the people, the flock, I would think were the Christians. So if it was that Isaiah is seeing this future nations, as he's mentioned other places here in Isaiah, then this future nation being taken and resting while the earth is being destroyed could possibly be what it's talking about. I'm not sure. And after much time, there will not be in it any green thing on account of drying out. Now, that could be a period of time after Nebuchadnezzar. It could be after the Romans, too. It's a hard one to say. The drying out over 2,000 years is much time. Between the Nebuchadnezzar and 70 years, and they came back, it was pretty well dried up and taken over by the people from other nations that the Nebuchadnezzar brought in. And now it goes into, and it says, "O women coming from a spectacle, come, for it is a people not having an understanding." Well, I was trying, what women are coming and seeing the spectacle is in the Bible? Well, in Matthew 27:55 we have, "And there were many women from far off viewing the crucifixion, who followed Jesus from Galilee, serving to him." They were seeing a spectacle, viewing. And then in Matthew 28:1, "And late of Sabbaths, in the evening on day one of the Sabbaths, came Mary the Magdalene and the other Mary," that is the one of Joses, who says in Mark, "to view the tomb." So they're viewing a spectacle as a tomb. In Luke 23:27-31, it says, "And were following him a great multitude of the people and women, which also were beating their chests and wailing over him as he's going to the cross. And having turned to them, Jesus said, 'Daughters of Jerusalem, weep not for me. Furthermore, weep for yourselves and for your children. For behold, days come in which they shall say, Blessed are the sterile, and bellies which bore not, and breasts which nurse not. Then they shall begin to say to the mountains, Fall upon us, and to the hills, Cover us. For if in the wet wood these things they do, what should happen in the dry?'" That's Luke 23:27-31. So these women coming from a spectacle, seeing the thing, Might be what he's talking about in Isaiah. He sees these women. And then in Luke 24:22 to 24, it says, "But also certain women from out of us," and this is on the road to Emmaus, the two disciples were talking to Jesus, who they didn't know that's who he was, said, the women, certain women from out of us amazed us, happening early unto the sepulchre, and not having found his body, they came, saying also to have seen an apparition of angels, who say him to be living. And some of the ones with us went forth into the sepulchre and found it also, as also the women said. So, on account, and I think that's it, on account of this, in no way should the one making them pity. So, God doesn't pity Israel after they crucify Christ. They are wiped away from Jerusalem and Israel. Nor the one shaping them in any way show mercy. And it will be in that day the Lord will shut up together from the aqueduct of a river unto Rhinochora. In the Greek it's Rhinochoron, and in the nominative it's Rhinochorura. Now, so I'm trying, what in the world is this? He shut up now in that day. So if that was the day of Jesus, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what it's talking about, but it could very well be the aqueducts of the river is probably in the Nile, because it says in the Strabo, which I have right here, I was 8 volumes, or I'm not sure, 6 or 7 volumes, a couple of volumes are in one book. And it has Greek on one side and English on the other. You have to kind of know Greek to know which one it is, but I do, so I get to use it. And I quote from this. I look things up when it especially has to do with locations, because Strabo was all over the Mediterranean and wrote about people that were doing the same thing, that were doing a lot of traveling, mentions all these different places. And here it says in Strabo 17:1-4, so that the whole Nile Delta has become navigable. Canals upon canals have been cut, which isn't this here aqueduct, diorigos. In the Greek, you would see that in there, the diorigos. Canals have been cut, which are navigated with such ease that some people even use earthenware ferry boats. So the Lord will shut up from the aqueduct of a river unto Rhinochora. Now, what is Rhinochora? Then in Strabo 16:2-3, it says, after Gaza, one comes to Raphia, where a battle was fought between Ptolemaeus IV and Antiochus the Great. Then to Rhinocolura, which I think is the same, Rhinocolura and Rhinocorora. Then to Rhinocolura, so-called from the people with mutilated noses that had been settled there in early time. For some Ethiopian invaded Egypt, and instead of killing the wrongdoers, cut off their noses and settled them at that place, assuming that on account of their disgraceful faces, they would no longer dare do people wrong. So this, the places that he's talking about is there, and it's actually, it says in Strabo 16:24, now the loads of aromatics are conveyed from this in Latin, Luce Come, to Petra, and thence to Rhinocolura, which is in Phoenicia near Egypt. So therefore it's in Gaza. And these aromatics were conveyed from Luca Come, which means white village. It was a Nabatean port on the Red Sea, but nobody's ever been able to find out exactly where it was located, although it's mentioned in ancient history. But you gathered together the sons of Israel according to one by one. Now, taking them out from wherever they were at. And it will be in that day, they shall trump the great trumpet. Here is a great trumpet. There is no mention of great trumpet in the Old Testament. But in Matthew 24:31, it says, Jesus says, "And he shall send his angels with a trumpet of a great sound." It's a great sound. It's not a great trumpet, but it's close. "And they shall assemble his chosen from out of the four winds, from the tips of the heavens unto their tips." And then in 1 Corinthians 15:51 and 52, it says, "We shall not all sleep, but all shall be changed in an instant, in the blink of an eye, at the last trumpet. For it shall trump, and the dead ones shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed." So this is definitely more than a trumpet of a man, or of men. 1 Thessalonians 4:16, it says, "For the Lord himself, in a word of command, by the voice of an archangel, and with the trumpet of God, shall descend from heaven, and the dead ones in Christ shall rise up first." So there, the trumpet of God. Now, what greater trumpet can it be talking about than the trumpet of God? So I see that as what's talking about in Thessalonians. And then in Revelation 1:10, it says, John says, "I became in spirit on the Lord's day, and I heard a great sound behind me as a trumpet." So again, it was a great sound, but I thought I'd bring those in and show them. So it will be in that day, "They shall trump the great trumpet," the angels, "and the ones being lost in the place of the Assyrians shall come, and the ones being lost in Egypt, and they shall do obeisance to the Lord upon the holy mountain in Jerusalem." So this trumpet of God could be a trumpet for a figure of speech for the people and the Jews that are dispersed through the world to come back to Jerusalem, which they have done since 1948, or continuing to do it even today. Chapter 28, we go into the woe to the hirelings of Ephraim. Ephraim was the northern kingdom of Israel, and they hired different peoples to fight their battles or fight with them. And we'll find out about these hirelings of Ephraim in the 28th chapter, and hope you'll join us in it. God bless.